Good afternoon. My name is Amy Grinsteiner, and I'm here today presenting to the Board of Directors on the topic of professional learning here at Trinity High School. This brief presentation will just quickly talk about what is professional learning, why is it something that we should be concerned about, how are we currently implementing it at Trinity High School, and what steps can we take to really push us to the next level to be a successful professional learning community. So before we can really talk about how we're doing with professional learning, we have to make sure we're all on the same page about why we care about this topic. So why professional learning? This definition is something that I pulled from the Solution Tree website. Solution Tree is a company that has worked a lot with different PLCs, has researched into what a PLC should look like, how effective PLCs can work, and the impact that PLCs can have on both teaching and student learning and achievement. So according to Solution Tree, a professional learning community is an ongoing process. It's not a thing, it's a process in which educators work collaboratively through collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for students. We're all educators, we're all here because we're concerned about our students and doing the best that we can for them. So it's pretty hard to argue against doing something that has been shown to achieve results for students. Solution Tree also notes that the key for improving learning for students is for continuous learning to happen among the educators. Our world is constantly changing, education is changing, there's constantly new technologies. We as educators need to be prepared to continue to adapt so we can provide our students with the best environment for them to be able to achieve and to succeed. This is not something that we have to try to figure out. There are standards for professional learning that can help us to know where we're at on different levels of the professional learning spectrum. It's important to use standards. We use standards to gauge our students' growth, where they're proficient, where they need a little bit of extra work. So it's just good practice for us to do the same, to look at standards and see where are we proficient, where do we need a little bit of extra work. And the great thing about using something like the national standards for professional learning is that someone has already put together this list. We don't have to figure out on our own what does a successful professional learning community look like. We instead can look at this list of standards put together by experts in the area who have done a lot of research to know where we stand in our achievement of becoming a professional learning community. Now, there are 7 standards up here. Learning communities, leadership in the learning community, using different resources, using data to drive our decisions, different learning designs, learning theories to help us, implementing our different interventions and judging whether those implementations are successful and how to keep them going in the long term, and then focusing on what outcomes we have. That's a lot of information to take on. And so instead of trying to go through all of those on a very surface level, I'm really going to just dig into the first one with this presentation, learning communities, because we have to be a successful learning community if we're going to be working on the rest of these. We can't start using data if we don't have our learning community in place to know how to gather, analyze, and interpret that data. Same for all of these other things. So in this presentation, we're going to focus on this first one of how to become a successful learning community. So our professional learning focus for this beginning of this year is going to be our learning communities. According to the national standards, a professional learning that increases educator effectiveness and results for all students occurs with learning communities that are committed to continuous improvement, collective responsibility, and goal alignment. So those 3 things, those are the indicators that we will be using to know how successful are we in becoming a learning community. Do we engage in continuous improvement? Do we develop collective responsibility for our students' achievement? And finally, are we creating alignment and accountability within our learning communities? And so to start to measure how we measure up with these indicators, I conducted a gap analysis just to see, are there areas where there's a gap between proficiency, between the expected level of a functioning, successful learning community, and where we currently are at Trinity High School. I did this through 4 different methods. First of all, I sat down and interviewed Father Hochhalter, the current principal here at Trinity, just to see what has been done, what initiatives are being put in place, what's working already at Trinity for their professional learning community. I then had a much more informal discussion with 3 other teachers around the lunch table, just in kind of a low stress setting, just to get some of their views, opinions, beliefs about professional learning communities as 3 members of the Trinity Learning Community. For the third and the fourth component, I took my own personal observations. I've been here at Trinity for a little over a month now, been involved in some of these different learning community activities, so I took those personal observations that I have, and then I also reviewed the documents that have been given during the professional learning community time that we have on our Wednesday late starts. So those 4 components are what I use to do our gap analysis. These are the results that I found. First of all, for the first indicator, engaging in continuous improvement, there were some positives to each one of these areas. And the positives with this first one is, number 1, the late start schedule. For the first time in the history of the school, Trinity is being very intentional about creating time for teachers to really develop this professional learning community. We start late every Wednesday. We have an hour of time for teachers to work together to achieve goals to better student experience here at our schools. These professional learning communities have already resulted in 1 round of data collections from student information. This data will be analyzed, interventions will be created based upon that data. So that's definitely steps in the right direction of engaging in this continuous improvement for our schools. There were a couple potential derailers, things that could get us off the track of becoming a professional learning community. The first thing, the biggest thing really, is a misunderstanding of what a PLC really is. Some of the teachers weren't exactly sure what we were trying to accomplish and what the point of these meetings are. They view these learning times as limited to just that hour on Wednesdays, and really PLC needs to be bigger than that. The members of the Solution Tree Company, they like to say that PLC is not something we do, PLC is what we are. We are a professional learning community. So we need to work on breaking out of that mindset of we're just a PLC for an hour every Wednesday morning. The next results that I found for the second indicator about developing collective responsibility, there were a number of positives as well. First of all, the intentionality of the administration. Both through the interview and my own personal observation, I have witnessed our administration saying we need to break out of this mindset of, well, if there's an issue happening in your classroom, but it's not happening in my classroom, so it's not my deal. Instead saying, if our students are having issues, it doesn't matter where it's occurring, we need to work collectively to iron out those issues and make sure that all students have the best opportunity to succeed. Also noticed during both the PLC meeting time on Wednesdays and during our grade level student intervention meetings, all teachers are very collectively responsible for achieving the defined goals and intentions for those meetings. No one sits back and expects everyone else to do the work. Everyone is very involved as a team. The potential derailers, though, is that this team mindset kind of fades when we come out of those meeting settings. Every teacher here at Trinity is a singleton, which means that they don't collaborate on any of their content areas in the same grade level. So because of that, we don't really share a lot of our resources, don't share best practices, we don't observe one another in the classroom, and that's something that could really derail our collective responsibility mindset in becoming a professional learning community. The last indicator about creating alignment and accountability. This is something that I've really noticed is in the mindset of the administration. The administration has provided very direct support, has been very upfront about their support for the different things, different work that is being done during the PLC time and in different teachers' classrooms. The agenda is always given to us at the beginning of our meetings. It's always aligned to the school's mission and vision, so we know exactly what we're working towards and why. In terms of accountability, every group during the PLC time is required to submit formal notes back to administration saying what they did, how this was working to achieve the goals that were identified, how this would better student achievement. And so that really makes everyone in this professional learning community be accountable, that they're using the time for student achievement, for student betterment, and not as a time for a staff meeting or a venting session or anything else. It keeps that accountability present. I really found during the gap analysis that there weren't many potential derailers for this indicator. Trinity has thus far been very strong. Like I said, we've really just started working on the PLC, and so we want to make sure that this stays a part of it. We want to continue to be intentional about aligning what we're doing to the school's mission and vision. We want to stay intentional about being accountable and working towards our goals. So far so good on this one. We want to make sure we're doing what we're doing. And so based upon this gap analysis, there are things that we're doing well, things that we need to work on. I have a couple suggestions for an action plan of things that we could consider to work on some of those potential derailers to make sure they don't move from the realm of potential to actual derailers. And so the first thing that I would include is increasing staff understanding of PLCs. I have two components to this action plan. First of all, I would like to take some of our budget that we have for professional development and send as many staff members as possible to Solution Tree's PLC at Work conference in Minneapolis. I myself have attended the conference. It is absolutely worth anyone in education to go to this conference. They teach about what a PLC is, why it's beneficial, very outcome-based, has a lot of research backing it up, and does a great job of just understanding the PLC process and increasing teacher buy-in, which is very essential for making sure that we become a successful professional learning community and we sustain that year to year to year. I would also say if we can't send all of our staff, we need to bring in some clear and direct information about the nature and purpose of PLCs. We've been doing this for about a month now. I think there's still some fogginess about what we're trying to do. So before we get too far in and lose teachers, we need to take a step back and just make sure everyone is very clear about what the purpose is that we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, and why we are focusing on this learning community and creating a successful learning community among educators at Trinity High School. My other area that I'd like to focus on is increasing the collaboration among staff members, bringing that collaborative spirit outside of that PLC meeting time and letting it permeate the whole school day. And so two things I thought of to do this. First of all, including time on the PLC agenda for teachers to share best practices and resources. No teacher teaches the same subject at the same grade level. However, most of us have the same students. We're not that big of a school. And so if I'm struggling with a student for a certain technique or practice in my history classroom, there may be something the math teacher has figured out that works with that said student. And so having time to share those different practices and resources can be very beneficial. I also want to create a schedule for teachers to observe one another. Teachers are very busy, and if we just say, please take some of your prep time to go observe another teacher, I don't think it's going to happen because there's a million things that we have to get done every single day. And so creating a schedule, nothing overwhelming, maybe 1 or 2 times a quarter, giving up a prep to go observe another teacher. Even spending that 1 50-minute class period observing another teacher could have great benefits for both the teacher being observed and the teacher doing the observing. And that will create that collaboration among the staff, because it's noted in the national standards that peer accountability can be a better motivator for teachers to want to continue learning than being accountable to their administration. And so that will really help create that collective responsibility on our staff for becoming better for everyone. This is just a start. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But I think we have a great foundation in place to really become a successful learning community here at Trinity. And once we get that solid foundation there, we can start to tackle some of those other standards that are listed in the national standards for professional learning.